Hi, I'd like to show the difference of two visual modification options in Photoshop that helps you enhance your design project and applies a modification to any of the images you are working with, either by brightness and contrast, adding a drop shadow, doing a color overlay, or even a special effects. And the two things that you can use are also not permanent and they can be always removed, modified, and changed even after you close your project and save it. So the first one I want to talk about is the simple one called layer styles. So under layer, you have layer styles and you have the blending option, which is controlled in the layer window as well, that you will see over here. Also, you have other little features that used to be, some were plugins for Photoshop, now have been incorporated. One that is bevel emboss, which is used on images and especially for fonts to give a mock 3D look. There is a stroke to add a outside color to an image, inner shadow, inner glow, satin, color overlay, a gradient overlay, a pattern overlay, outer glow, and of course, drop shadow. So you have these options located here. You can also turn it on by double tapping your layer and giving you the control panel to that. And also in Photoshop down at the bottom, you will see the letter FX, and that also allows you to get to the image, get to the settings. The second one to use some modification is called adjustment. There is two adjustments in Photoshop. There is under image adjustment, brightness and contrast, levels to control the shadows and brightness and darkness of an image, vibrance to intensify the color, hue and saturation, to change the color, balance your colors, do filters to it, and to invert, posterize, do a gradient map, selective colors, shadow and highlights, desaturate, replace colors, equalize. Some of these features are also included in the layer, and these, as opposed to the ones under image and adjustment, these are permanent. These options you have are modified, that you can also adjust them after the fact. After you have closed your file and reopen it, you can always go back and you have the option of turning it off. And there is a difference between this color overlay as opposed to the FX or a layer style color overlay. They run by selection, and you have another adjustment window that shows you the little shortcut icons as well. So layer adjustment is found under layer, below layer style, you have new adjustment layers, and then you'll have control shortcuts to this menu through the menu bar. So I'm going to show a few options with a file, And the first one I'm going to show is this car. And you have this car, and you may want to do just adjustment or change the color. So you can have the option of doing a color adjustment. You can go down here and you can do brightness and contrast or levels, which I like better than brightness and contrast. And you can control the shadows. You can control the shine and the highlights, and you can control the midtones of an image. And even after you finish that, you will see you will have an icon that shows that it is on, and it has a mask that works with these adjustments. Because I selected the car, it made a mask. If I didn't select the car, it could have done adjustments to the whole image. But you can also press the I to turn off what you applied. So the next one I want to do is select the car, and I'm going to do another adjustment. And this time I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do hue and saturation. And it's going to make a new layer. It applied a new layer just above the levels. And I'm going to press colorize right here. And you'll notice the car colors change. And I can adjust up at here, slider bar, go through different colors, saturation to make it more intense. So I'll make it, instead of pink or a mauve, I'm gonna bring it up to intensify the red, and I can do lightness and darkness and change the color of the car. So of course, this car is a 300 SL, probably only available in a few colors and probably red, but most of the time they are seen as silver. But you can do a crazy color, give it a little 50s color, a little Tiffany blue, a little teal or green, British racing green. So you can play with the colors, changing the color of the car. So if I didn't have it selected and I went back and did adjustment, I'm going to show you what will happen. It will affect everything. So I'm going to turn off my adjustment and my levels, and I'm going to apply the same effect. Going down here to hue and saturation, and if I change the color, it's changing everything as well. The sky, if I hit colorize, it's going to give you a monotone color of a red, and everything else will turn red. So that's what colorize means, that everything is being captured in one color scheme. If you turn that off, everything will change differently and you'll get a unusual mix of combinations of colors. So you may want to always decide, do you want to select or color everything? So those are the modifications. And once again, if you don't like it, you can turn it off. So there's other things. If I select the car again, and I went through brightness and contrast, which adjust that, I can do solid color. Which fills it in, solid color. And then, of course, you have to do blending, because you lose your detail of the color because it's solid color. The other ones at the top are pattern. So if you don't select pattern, select the area and you say pattern, it just fills in with a pattern. And you can scale your pattern. And I didn't isolate anywhere, so that is the pattern. But if I select the car and chose pattern, now I have only flowers contained inside the silhouette of the car. And then the last one I'm going to use is black and white. This one seeks out the colors of the car. It's more light blues, so if I do that and take the blues out, take the red out, I can get a black and white image of the car. But it's hard to see that effect unless I apply it to the whole image. So I'm going to do black and white again. And now you can see and you can adjust the color. So turn it off. You'll see it's applying tones of grays and making it a black and white photo. You can turn that off. So you can even do combinations of these. So you can have that with the flowers. And of course, you see the flowers are black and white, but if you take the flowers and put it above the black and white, you can get the color back. Same as for the red. So if I bring this red up above the black and white control, now I can have a red car on a black and white background. So it's like you'll have a whole bunch of roses and one rose will be red. So that's the effects you can do while modifying the colors. And the last one I'm going to apply, I'm going to turn off the black and white, is a crazy little thing called gradient map. I'm doing a blue and white gradient, but I can do a rainbow gradient, and it maps out the colors to the image. So it looks at the tone of color and applies the dark blue to the shadows and then the red to the light colors. When you're doing multiple, it's figuring out the blues are going to the shadow, the bright green and the yellow are going to the highlights. So that's what it does. So it substitutes all the colors in the shadow of that car and makes the gradient match the color. So that is gradient map and gives you a unique psychedelic color car. Now the difference between adjustment layer and layer styles I will show you now. Layer styles, there is color overlay. I selected the car, but when I use color overlay, it doesn't see the car. It sees the whole area. So it's overlaying color to everything. So it doesn't listen to your magic wand. It does overlay blue, but it's overlaying over the whole image. So if I did any other things like a drop shadow, I won't see no effects because what I do need to have for those to work is to isolate a image from a background. So this car needs to be on a separate background where the effects only see the car. So I would have to have a copy over that. So I will show you what that means. So going to another one here, say for example the astronaut, if I do color overlay now of blue, it only affects the astronaut. If I took and say selected only the helmet and I want to do just to the mask a blue color overlay, it won't work because the color overlay, the layer style, reads only pixels, not what you selected. So if you did that, you would have to do adjustment layers and do a color only there. But the layer style does have its benefits. You have a stroke. I'm gonna make this red, and it's 25 pixels, so you can make it smaller. And you can give your drawing, not your drawing, but your image, a outline. You can go in here and do satin, or you can do color overlay now, and then blend it. And unfortunately, I had a mask applied, so the mask is also being captured inside my stroke outline. So the layer style works with a mask, but unfortunately it even detects that border, so I don't need that mask. I would have to really have to have this cut away and paste. So it's pretty basic and not so intuitive of where to apply the stroke. So it just applies the stroke to when it finds something. But the color overlay is working, so you can have that on. Another nice thing about it is that these layer styles, you can go over here and you can select this, right click, and copy this to another layer. Or you can click here on the menu, go down, and you can copy that layer style. So let's find Copy layer style at the bottom of the list. So I'm going to click on effects, click on the overlay, so another great thing about this is that you can copy, by right clicking, you can copy that layer style. So if you click right on the FX, go down below the options and copy that, you can copy that and go to another layer, right click and paste that layer style to another layer to apply the same effect. So I have that turned off. So see, and if you don't need it, you can always right click and clear it and remove it from your background. So if I paste that again, I'm gonna undo it. I have the stroke and the color overlay. Copy from the astronaut. So those are layer style. Another one you can do, because I had this selected, is that I can go to this here, go to layer style, and a gradient overlay, and it makes a silhouette. And I can do blending. Double click, I can do multiply, different blending. Of the gradient. Another thing with layer style is that it does have some features just like adjustment layer. And one thing that happens when you do adjustment layer, I'm going to select the model, is that when I do adjustment layer, and I'm going to do the gradient map again, it applies it, and it has its own layer and mask. So if I delete this mask and do the gradient overlay, it applies it to everything. So this one is different. The layer effects overlay applies it to the whole layer. The layer adjustment layer will apply it to all layers down to the bottom. So if you don't want it to affect all your layers and you don't want the astronaut and the background of the sky to change, you will have to stop it by clicking on this and then going down to the option of the property below, and that will click here on this icon. It only applies to the model, and the astronaut and the sky around it is not affected. So anytime you use layer style, adjustment layer, you want to make sure it's only staying in one area. You would do the drop down menu, double click, turn it on, and select that, and you will see this little drop down arrow indicating that it's only on that layer. not the astronaut and not your background. So that's how you protect other images from changing. And the last thing I'm going to show is with the words, I'm going to do a bevel and emboss. Zoom in, and you can see the effects already applied. You got more shadow to it. You can adjust the size of the emboss. You can do different angles of the gloss and the highlight. Here, you can do this one, peaked, ramped, curved, shorter curve, longer curve. And you can even change it, instead of it being a black shadow, you can change it to red or another color, and it'll give you a metallic option. But just be careful about the adjustment, how much contour you have, how bright it is. So that is contour. You can even do texture. So you click on contour, you can even adjust the contour even further. And you can do, after all that, you can do an outer glow. This is too big, so I'm gonna bring the size down, closer to the letters, and I'm gonna do a spread to make it softer around the edge. And even the model, I can do a effect, double click the word effect, do an outer glow, turn it on, would help. Now I'm double click the outer glow. Change it to screen. Adjust it to your liking, how you want it to glow. I noticed that up here there's like a little, that means that there is a little bit of pixels being captured, probably in my mask. I might have missed a little spot, so I'm going to take the paintbrush to fix that, and I'm going to paint black right up here on my mask. Not white, sorry, black. To hide that missing pixel. So going back to the astronaut, that's throat. Unfortunately, if I take black on that mask, it does work. I think I just had a little white pixel captured. So the good thing is I did not have to delete the background. and the mask, sometimes it happens, it just saw just a little hairline of pixels. So those are the difference between the effects. But like I said, if you don't have it protecting, when you do adjustment layer, always remember, do you want it to only affect one part? If not, turning that off affects everything. So even if you have a group of folder of images and you want to apply effects to all three of them, that'd be the best way of having a folder of images and you want all these shapes to have the same effect. So those are the difference between layer style and adjustment layer. They both have the same kind of features, but adjustment layer you have a little bit more control, and adjustment layer always wants to have its own layer above whatever you're working. So it gets kind of busy with your work. The effects are great too. It almost gives you the same thing as adjustment layer, except you cannot control brightness and your contrast, which is, I always tell everyone, those are definitely good if you're a photographer. Your brightness and contrast and vibrance and color balance and black and white are great because if you want to adjust a photo and give a couple of options before you finalize it. So those are the difference between those two amazing adjustments and modifications to make your image stand out, or even changing the color of your file. So I love that. So even if you select a part of a photo, you can isolate that, and that's the job that the adjustment layer does so well, is that you can select the bodysuit and the necklace, and I can do my favorite hue and saturation, double click it to show the options, in the properties, and I can do my and just modify and adjust. So that's one thing the layer style effects do not have control over. It's changing the colors of your pixels and changing the adjustments of the brightness and lightness of a pixel. So those are the little things. You have special effects, embossing and outer glow, and drop shadow. And then you have adjustments, layers, which controls the hue and saturation and brightness and color of pixels and of your image. So play with them. You always get some unique, interesting options. So you can always select something, go back, select another part of an image. Say, for example, I'm going to select her hair. as this Australian guy said when he was showing selection. I just love it. Select the hair. So I'm selecting her hair, and I'm going to go to hue and saturation, and I'm going to say colorize, and I'm going to make it chartreuse green. Just bump it up. So this is a good thing to do while you're locked down too. Play with your hair, play with your eye color, mess around, have fun. So you have your quarantine makeover. Okay? Get in there, go crazy. But don't forget, Photoshop is the diva software, and it demands a lot of attention, and it needs a lot of things. So it just takes time. You just have to play with it and fiddle around, and you may surprise yourself. It always surprises me, even after 20 years of messing with this thing. Okay, enjoy.